I think the first game we got was from King Doggo, 13Q, and then Pelias, 12Q. I think this game was submitted by Pelias. So thank you for that. And I think it's taken from the WGQ tournament, but I could be wrong. Either that or the Open. So it's fresh from this week. And yeah, let's find out what happens. This is very exciting. I
Let's
think
get right
it's
into it. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Feel free to ask any questions. I will try to go as slow as I can. And we will. I see the one of the players are in the chat, so that's
I
also
believe so.
a
Yeah,
good
actually,
thing.
both of them. I think both of them seem to be in chat. So this is great. We'll actually get
So
some
the first thing I see from this is that this Joseki doesn't seem to be played correctly. Right? So I think when we learn Go, first we learn the rules, and then I guess the first thing that people tell me is that after they learn the rules, it's really hard to know where to play in the opening. And Joseki are a really good way to start that out, right? So I think it's important to memorize like just 20 Joseki just to have like a few in the bag so you can play. So I highly recommend, if you're a WGQ and you don't really know that many Joseki, I highly recommend that, you just go open a Joseki book and just pick up some Joseki. It will definitely help you in the long run. Yeah, even though it's can be quite boring, but so black is supposed to Hana and connect first. So white could either connect or pull back, and then black could jump out. So if you know like generally what you're supposed to play, it will also help you gauge what to do when your opponent does something differently compared to what they're supposed to do. So if you think about it, if you know this is what's supposed to happen, what I have on the board here, then you can already tell that black didn't do very well in the game because when black pushed and black actually came onto the second line. Now, while this might be okay when it's open, but the fact that there are these two stones, that makes it really good for white, right? Because this black stone is very close to white's wall. It's pretty much not going to be doing very much. But the white stone is pincering black, so these two stones are definitely good for white. And also black is on the second line. And clearly, if you compare to the other sequence, then we know that this is going to be a little bit better for white game. Yeah. So, I see a comment. Yeah. Well, so the comment is that there's the Joseki strategy. If you know the right sequence, so what happens if your opponent doesn't play the right sequence? Well, I would say that if you don't even know the right sequence, then how can you even reach that step, right? If you have actually reached the trap, then that's actually already progress because at least you know what's going on, right? Dealing with the different follow-up moves after Joseki takes a lot more than simply memorizing. Of course, it takes reading and other skills, but that's not something you need to worry about if you're actually that's not something you can worry about if you don't even know the Joseki, right? How do you continue then? Because you're automatically going to be a little bit worse than your opponent. So,
Josekis are overrated.
well, only for you.
Well, this is why I dropped down to like 10% in AI evaluation so early. But yeah,
Yeah,
Josekis
I
are
mean,
important, so please learn Josekis, guys.
yeah. Well, it's not. I'm not saying like you should just follow Joseki as Bibles. That's clearly not true. But um, if it's a good it's a good basis to have. It's like working off of something, right? You have something to work on, work from. Like, of course, you can deviate from Joseki if you know what you're doing, or if you and both don't know what you're doing, then it's a free for all. So yeah, so in this case, white made a mistake, which white should definitely defend the corner. So you definitely don't want this stone to be surrounded. So these are just general Joseki mistakes, which I won't focus too much on since I think I already spent too much time on Joseki. Yeah, and yeah, so that's a really good point. You like learning shape is a big part of Go studying in general. And well, first of all, why do Joseki exist? Well, because players have investigated these Go shapes for thousands of years, and they realized that okay, these shapes make sense. So that's why these exist. So there's a reason why they exist. It's like learning algebra or something when you start out math. So I think they're important. They're not always going to be the correct move, but they're important to know. So the next thing, this actually is a good segue to the next thing.
I did not expect that, but okay.
What? Oh,
this is gonna happen a lot, by the way.
Steven got so surprised that he surprised me. Yeah. So this move doesn't look right. Yeah. So, and that's like the next thing I wanted to get to, which is like general shape stuff. Like, I mean, when you play Go, especially when stones are close to each other, all these different shapes starts to happen, right? So, for example, we have a lot of relative shape. For example, we have like a knight's move here. That's a relative shape. Okay. So one thing about this shape I can say is that, so if you look at the triangle stones, the move that white played is actually very close to the three stones, right? The one stone is very close to the three stones. That's not ideal, especially when you have strong stones. You don't want to play close to your strong stones if you don't have to. So there's actually something fundamentally not right about this shape, right? It's not doing as much as it can. And the next thing, which is probably why Steven was so surprised, was because white has a very big weakness, right? But white didn't actually protect it. So actually, this black Hane is a very good move at c5. And so the two square black stones and the cornerstone are not really connected yet, right? And you really should protect that. And I think what I've noticed generally for Q players is that it's sometimes you just don't see your own weaknesses. And I kind of see that as like not sort of like when you're not really thinking on your opponent. Like, so when you're playing a game, it's a game between two players, right? And you either win or your opponent wins, right? So that's obvious. Now your opponent wants to play moves, right? So naturally you should think about the moves that your opponent might want to play. So this kind of like changing your thinking direction is very useful. And I think that one reason that I don't see people protecting their weaknesses is that they're not really thinking for their opponent. What you need to do is pretend you're your opponent for like 1 minute. Okay, maybe not 1 minute, maybe 30 seconds, maybe 5 seconds. Okay, think about where you would play if you were your opponent. And I think that this sort of thinking is very helpful. And this could help. It's one way to help avoid these kind of situations.
What if you thought that your opponent would resign? And then you.
Well, then you're probably already winning by so much that you wouldn't really care about this.
No, but what if you wanted your opponent to resign, even if they're leading? No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
I mean, you have to work for them. You have to work for them.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, so I think this is a very important weakness, and white needs to do something here. So, and like, just sometimes like a good way to make these judgments is you just have to like count how many moves. So like if we look at the corner, how many stones does black have? Like we're just gonna turn this into a simple counting problem. So black has 5 stones here. White has 3 stones, and black is gonna make the 6th move. So naturally, you would think that this is not gonna be a very good situation for white because white is completely outnumbered. So yeah, for these reasons, white should definitely protect something. So maybe like just pull back or play 5. I think both of these would be very okay moves, and the game would still take a long way. But in the actual game, this took a very unexpected turn, and I think there could have been a lot harsher consequences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're thinking about C4, right? If black
yes,
through.
yes, exactly. So the same thing for black. I mean, if you're black right now and you realize that you have way more stones than your opponent, and then you're definitely in the attacking position. White is completely cornered and outnumbered, which means black should take this to their advantage and abuse the situation, right? So, for example, if black just extends, white is completely cornered, right? So yeah, I mean, like this is a very difficult fight for white, and this would change the game a lot, right? So it's actually, you know, when I look at different games like this, right, it's really just a few moves. Like if you just change your decision in like 1 or 2 moves, sometimes this could be the only difference between, say, a double-digit Q or a single-digit Q, right? And it's just like one move like this, bam, 30 points, right? Another move like this, 50 points, right? Who knows? So yeah, so every decision in Go is important, and yeah, it's basically, you know, who can avoid making the bad decisions. And we're gonna see we're gonna see black making similar decisions like this.
Right.
So this was all fine. Not a huge deal. Maybe a little slight mistakes, but not a huge deal. Now this move has a very big problem. So maybe I'll ask the chat. So why is this move wrong? And what would you have played instead of this S2 move? So why is this move wrong? And what would you have played instead of that? I see a lot of good answers. Yes.
Tengen. No.
Okay.
It's a silly thing that gets people to laugh. So whatever works.
So I'm gonna put some options, I guess. I mean, you could invade. I mean, I see a lot of people saying M3. Yep. P13. Okay. We'll put that as an option. Well, let's put this as an option as well. Maybe we'll put like a double tiger snuff there as an option. These type of moves should like sort of be present when you brainstorm. Like brainstorming is very important in Go. It's like it's part of your intuition, right? It's just like when you look at an empty board position, like where are your ideas, right? Are any of these among your ideas? Or maybe they're just completely not what you're thinking, and the only move that appears to you is S2. So if S2 is your only move, then we definitely need to improve our intuition, right? Because so I see a lot of good reasoning in the chat, right? The main reason why this is not the best move is because, first of all, it's not a very big place on the board. Black is not looking at the whole board. Right? There's actually a lot of more important things you could do. I think A and D are both pretty good options. A is extremely important because there's a wall here, and you want to use the wall to invade, and that would, first of all, it would destroy white's territory on the bottom, and also it gives a good usage for the triangle blackstones. But if white has this move, then black is not going to be able to use this wall. This wall is not very useful. You don't want to use walls to make points. Like this is a terrible way to use a wall because you're only making like 7 points maximum using like over 10 stones. So that's a very inefficient move. So A should strike to you as an important move. The second important move, D, is actually a relative shape move. D makes black very strong. As I mentioned, it's a double tiger's mouth, right? So if you play this move, black becomes very, very strong. And also it threatens white's shape on the left side. Now, there are 2 cutting points right now, and if white ignores this move, black would definitely be able to cut at A or B and capture one side. So this move is a very important move as well, okay, because of the local shape. Now, if I was doing this for a Dan level review, I would probably not put D as an option, but I think that it's really important to realize these shape positions when you're a Q player, because it's important to make strong shapes. Especially when your reading is not like super developed, shape is really what's going to guide you before your reading can be up to date with the game. So I think D is also an important move. Now, this move is really not thinking about the whole board, because I feel like black is only looking in this corner. Now, what about the other options, B and C? Are these good options? So I have a problem with one of the moves, but I think the other move might be okay.
Yeah, I think there's one move that's obviously not putting a lot of pressure on anything, I would say.
Yeah. So you don't want to play B, right? Why don't you want to play B in this board position? Yeah, so I see most people preferring C in the chat. C is not really the most important move. And actually the main reason for this is because the corner is still not very strong. For example, if white descends, if black wants to block in the corner, white would still be able to connect that. For example, if white just exchanges this and then pawn A, and this is a very clear connection. So black is really just escaping this one stone, creating a weak group, and not really accomplishing much. I'm talking about this because this actually happened later in the game, and I think we can remember this concept, and when we come back to it, you're going to remember this. Okay, but C is actually a lot better than B. Right? There's a big problem with B, and it's because white is pretty much alive, and you never want to surround alive groups, right? If a group is alive, then there's no point in surrounding them unless this side is really important. And right now it's not, because white has a stone at h17, so that doesn't really help very much. So this right group is very much settled, and you don't really want to enclose a group that you can't really threaten. You're not really gaining very much in return. Yeah, so after that, it seems like nobody really played on the lower side, and then a different fight started. So here, this move violates a very important concept. I think I'm going a little bit slow, but yeah. So this concept is that, so think about it this way. So black played the 2-space extension, okay, and then white played a move in the middle. This move will clearly help enclose this black stone, okay? So if your opponent already spends a move in one place, and you're going to play a move again right in that same place, just, what do you think is going to happen? You're pretty much eyeing your opponent being like, oh, I don't care about you. I'm just going to do whatever I want, right? So that might be okay. Well, but actually, generally, that's a very bad strategy, right? Your opponent has just played an extra move there. Unless that move is completely useless, which probably isn't, then this is not a very good strategy, because you're jumping out from a place where your opponent just protected. Okay, so it's not a good strategy, right? So your opponent has a lot of guys there, and they're defending it, right? But the lower side is completely open. So do you want to send your troops to attack a place where it's heavily guarded, and you don't really, even if you succeed, you barely gain much? Or do you want to attack a place like at M3 that's barely ever guarded and you gain a lot, right? So if you think about the risks associated, then you can, it shouldn't be a very difficult reasoning to disregard this move in the game, right? And in the game, it actually ended up pretty bad for black because eventually white ended up capturing this group.
Uh-oh. That escalated very quickly.
Yes, it did. So that was a very important reason why black fell behind, but that the game was still not over, and it's because of this bottom, right? It was really not until white played this L3 move until white
no.
gained the lead, right? So we were pretty much eyeing this move. We were hoping white would do this for a very, very long time until finally white came here. So take home points is that you definitely need to look at the whole board, pretty much every single move, because chances are there's going to be more important things than what you're thinking about. If you're not looking at the whole board even, then how are you going to find those moves, right? So you need to be looking. And I think that's a very important point. And so I guess we can move on to the second game.
Yeah, sure. Maybe just a quick summary as Eva-Dee, our line producer, switches over to the second game.
Sure. So in this game, I pointed out a lot of. So first of all, joseki is a really good way to learn shape. You should get a sense of generally how josekis go, and look at some joseki. And the second thing is you need to be looking at the whole board, and not just in one local position. So if you're looking at the whole board, then you will be able to see the bigger moves on the board, and you will be able to get them faster than your opponent. And the third thing is you don't want to be attacking in a local position where your opponent just protected. So you're strategically, that does not really make sense.
Yeah, Go is very much of a war strategy game. You know, I think the difference between Go and chess is that as someone mentioned in Twitch chat, like every piece in Go is uniform, right? So they all carry the same weight and they have the same power. So instead of instead of trying to like think of where the king goes and where the queen goes and that kind of thing, you think of your stones as groups, right? As armies, and then you're the general deploying them to the battlefield. So it visually it feels a little bit different, and sometimes you can see in a game of Go that for example, like if in an area you have more stones, right, and for, like in the bottom right corner, then visually it just seems like you're in a better position. Sometimes you can tell like just by the number of stones that are floating around. Of course, sometimes it depends on the surrounding positions as well. Like in the case of the bottom, the top left corner, rather, actually does depend on black's corner shape as well. So Go is a very Go is a game that requires a lot of global thinking. I think so. Like when you first learn the rules, you obviously like learn how to capture, and so you're able to capture like one or two of your opponent's stones, and that's great. But once you get to like a full board game, right, then you're really thinking about what's going on everywhere and trying to weigh different options. So I would definitely say that it's a very sophisticated concept that Go offers.
Yep. Really like that summary, Steven. And I will add to that. So in chess, right, the two primary thinking is your own king and your opponent's king, right? In Go, it's territory and influence, right? So there are different concepts, but territory and influence are relatively more abstract and whole board oriented. So there's no really focal point of the board. And if you realize you're looking at one place more than other places, then you should stop yourself.
Right. Yeah, it's a very the way you think about a game of Go and the way you think about a game of chess is these two are very different. I think. Well, as you mentioned, in Go, there's not a clear piece that would turn out to be the target, right? And well, secondly, I actually didn't mention this earlier. Like Go, you add more stones to the board, right? In chess, you have fewer and fewer pieces on a board. But in Go, you have your position actually develops over time. That's also something very different. So as more stones are being put down, like the position can change, right? So what is valuable before can turn out to be very different. Like I think, for example, later on in the game, like when Black really needed to go there, go in like L3 or M3,
Yeah.
that would be even, I think, even larger. It was like large before, right? It was a very large move before that, but at that point, it would be like the most urgent thing in the world. So yeah, like the value of move does change sometimes,
Yep.
depending on the global position.